The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is one of the longest-running and most complex disputes in modern international relations. Throughout history, it has gone through various phases, ranging from diplomatic negotiations to full-scale wars, and in recent years it has entered a particularly hot phase marked by frequent escalations of violence, especially in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. This is fundamentally an ethnic territorial conflict. It is fought between two ethno-religious communities, Jews, Israelis, and Palestinians, over the territory of the former British Mandate of Palestine, which includes today's Israel, the West Bank, and the Gaza Strip. On one side is the State of Israel and the Israeli people. On the other is the Palestinian people and a partially recognized State of Palestine. Israeli identity is primarily built around Judaism, one of the oldest monotheistic religions in history. While originally a religion, Judaism has also evolved into an ethno-cultural identity. The Jewish people lived in the ancient kingdoms of Judea and Israel, but after failed uprisings against Roman rule, especially the Bar Kokhba revolt, 132 to 135 CE, they were expelled, beginning a millennia-long diaspora. Despite their dispersal across many regions, Jewish communities retained a strong sense of collective identity through shared religious practices, traditions, and the dream of returning to the ancestral homeland. The longing for Zion, often expressed in liturgy and folklore, became a central theme of Jewish cultural and spiritual life throughout the centuries. During the diaspora, Jews preserved their religious identity and collective memory of the Promised Land. The Hebrew language ceased to be spoken colloquially, but survived in religious texts. Modern Hebrew was revived in the 19th century, thanks largely to the efforts of linguists such as Eliezer ben Yehuda. This linguistic revival was a vital component of the broader Zionist project, serving as a unifying cultural force for Jews of diverse backgrounds. Hebrew went from being a language of prayer and scripture to a living, everyday language of communication in the Jewish homeland, laying the groundwork for national rebirth. Diaspora Jews were generally divided into three major groups: Ashkenazi, Jews from Central and Eastern Europe; Sephardi, Jews originally from the Iberian Peninsula, expelled from Spain in 1492, many of whom settled in the Ottoman Empire, North Africa, the Balkans, and later parts of the Middle East and the Americas; Mizrahi, Jews from the Middle East and North Africa. Palestinians are predominantly Arab, mostly Sunni Muslims. There is also a Christian minority, about 1 to 2%, and small communities of Shia Muslims, Druze, Baha'is, and atheists. Although Palestinian Christians played an important role in shaping national identity during the 20th century, their numbers have dwindled significantly due to emigration caused by the ongoing conflict. Palestinians share a common Arabic language, a rich and continuous historical presence in the region, and national symbols such as the Palestinian flag, the Palestinian key, and the keffiyeh. These elements help sustain a shared sense of identity and purpose, both within the Palestinian territories and in the global diaspora. The conflict takes place in present-day Israel, the West Bank, and the Gaza Strip. The State of Palestine is recognized as a sovereign state by 147 of the 193 member states of the United Nations, or just over 75% of all UN members. It is a member of many international organizations and a signatory to the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. However, it does not meet all classical criteria of statehood. Palestine lacks full territorial control and a unified central government. According to the 1933 Montevideo Convention, a state must have a permanent population, defined territory, effective government, and the capacity to engage in foreign relations. The State of Palestine partially fulfills these criteria. It has a permanent population and claims defined territory, but it lacks full territorial control. Large portions of the West Bank remain under Israeli occupation, and the Gaza Strip is governed separately by Hamas following a conflict with the Palestinian Authority. Since 2023, the Israeli military has gained control over a large portion of Gaza, reportedly up to 77% of its territory, through ground offensives and enforced evacuations. The Jewish connection to the land traces back to antiquity, with the ancient kingdoms of Israel and Judah forming the heart of early Jewish civilization. However, following Roman conquests, especially after the Bar Kokhba revolt in 135 CE. Many Jews were expelled, beginning a long diaspora. During this time, the region saw successive waves of inhabitants, including Byzantine Christians, and, from the 7th century onward, Arab Muslim populations who became the demographic and cultural majority. This Arab presence laid the foundation for what would become the Palestinian identity. Thus, both Jewish and Palestinian claims to the land are rooted in centuries of historical continuity, shaped by conquest, displacement, and enduring cultural ties. In the late 19th century, amid rising European nationalism and anti-Semitism, the Zionist movement emerged with the goal of establishing a Jewish homeland in Palestine. This vision was fueled by centuries of longing for Zion and the desire for self-determination. The first Aliyah, or wave of Jewish immigration, began in 1882 under Ottoman rule. These early settlers established agricultural communities and revived Hebrew as a spoken language, a cultural transformation that would later become central to Israeli identity. However, this influx of immigrants also intensified tensions with the local Arab population, who feared displacement and loss of political control. These early frictions foreshadowed the deeper conflict to come. During World War I, Britain made overlapping promises to Jews and Arabs that would later prove irreconcilable. In the Hussein-McMahon Correspondence, Britain pledged support for Arab independence, including in Palestine, in exchange for an Arab revolt against the Ottomans. Yet in 1917, the Balfour Declaration expressed British support for a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. These conflicting commitments were compounded by the secret Sykes-Picot Agreement, which divided the region between British and French spheres of influence. After the war, Britain was granted the mandate for Palestine, tasked with implementing the Balfour Declaration while also managing the expectations of the Arab majority, an impossible balancing act that sowed the seeds of future unrest. Under the British Mandate, 1922 to 1948, Jewish immigration surged, especially as anti-Semitic persecution intensified in Europe. Jewish institutions, infrastructure, and paramilitary groups developed rapidly, while Arab Palestinians grew increasingly alarmed by land sales and demographic shifts. Tensions erupted into violence, including the 1929 riots and the Arab Revolt of 1936 to 1939, which was met with brutal British suppression. Britain's 1939 White Paper attempted to limit Jewish immigration, angering Zionists just as the Holocaust loomed. The Mandate period was marked by deepening divisions, failed diplomacy, and the emergence of competing national movements, each claiming the same land as their rightful home. The Holocaust, in which 6 million Jews were murdered, galvanized international support for the creation of a Jewish state. In 1947, the United Nations proposed a partition plan, Resolution 181, that would divide mandatory Palestine into 2 independent states, one Jewish and one Arab. According to the plan, the Jewish state would receive approximately 56.5% of the land, while the Arab state would receive about 43%. This division was controversial, as Jews made up roughly 1/3 of the population at the time and owned a smaller portion of the land. The plan also designated Jerusalem and its surrounding areas, including Bethlehem, as a separate international zone, to be administered by the United Nations due to its religious significance to Jews, Christians, and Muslims alike. Jewish leaders accepted the plan, viewing it as a long-awaited opportunity for sovereignty. Palestinian and Arab leaders rejected it, arguing that it violated the rights of the Arab majority and unfairly favored the Jewish minority. The plan's failure to gain consensus set the stage for civil war and, eventually, full-scale regional conflict. The region, already strained by decades of mistrust and colonial manipulation, now braced for a violent transformation. On May 14, 1948, the State of Israel declared independence. The following day, a coalition of Arab states launched a military intervention, marking the start of the First Arab-Israeli War. The invading countries included Egypt, Transjordan, now Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, and Saudi Arabia, with additional support from smaller contingents such as Yemen and irregular forces like the Arab Liberation Army. Despite being outnumbered, Israeli forces managed to repel the invasion and expand their territory beyond the UN partition lines. By 1949, Israel controlled about 78% of the former Mandate territory. Jordan annexed the West Bank, and Egypt took control of Gaza. The war had devastating consequences for Palestinians. Hundreds of villages were depopulated or destroyed, and around 750,000 Palestinians became refugees. This mass displacement, known as the Nakba, remains a defining moment in Palestinian history and a central grievance in the ongoing conflict. The Nakba, or catastrophe, refers to the mass displacement of Palestinians during the 1948 war. As Israeli forces advanced, many Palestinians fled or were expelled from their homes. Their villages were often razed, and they were barred from returning. Today, millions of their descendants live in refugee camps or in exile, many still holding keys to homes they or their families once owned, a powerful symbol of the right of return. The Nakba is not just a historical event. It is a living memory that continues to shape Palestinian identity, politics, and demands for justice. It remains one of the most emotionally charged and unresolved aspects of the conflict. This narrative has traced the roots of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, from ancient ties to the land, to colonial entanglements, nationalist awakenings, war, and displacement. We've explored how both peoples developed distinct identities, forged through history, trauma, and aspiration. The conflict is not simply a clash of religions or ideologies. It is a deeply human struggle over land, memory, and belonging. In the next video, we'll examine the wars of 1956, 1967, and 1973, the rise of the PLO and Hamas, the Oslo Accords, the Intifadas, and the evolving geopolitical landscape of the Middle East. Understanding the past is essential to imagining a different future.